Hey everybody, welcome back to the 40th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Design the Everything, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Hi Harrison, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. But before we get started, can I say, and this is not something we say very often, but if you would like help with having some parts made, you can reach out to Harrison at Precision Ingenuity on his Instagram account, or go to his website, precisioningenuity.com. And if you want to buy something that I make, designtheeverything.com.
Yeah.
Upfront call to action. We never do those, but
no, that's
it
good.
Seemed fun this time.
And you know, I have had a few people that have found us through the podcast. And for those of you who have reached out, and a few of you that I've made some parts for, I greatly appreciate it. And it's always fun getting to talk with people and seeing where they're at in their walks of life, and help them make some parts. So
I think I've only had one sale that I can credit to the podcast, and that was just the other day. So thank you, Ed. We appreciate you.
Yeah. So anyways, it's been a ton of fun. Speaking of websites, I hear you're having some great success on that front.
Yeah, so our website sales have really picked up recently. The other day, it was like Friday. It was like Friday was a pretty good sales day. It's like, okay, that's cool. And then Saturday was like a really good sales day. It was like, okay, that's cool. And then like Sunday was a really good sales day. Today's a little bit more average, but it's still like, I don't know, probably double or triple of what we were seeing on a normal day. But so yeah, yesterday was our highest website, or I should say online sales, because that does also include Etsy. So last week was our highest online sales week of all time, excluding Kickstarters, because that doesn't count. But even like when we released the retrofit kit, or when we did smaller product releases, still last week, biggest week. And then this week is, we're only 2 days in, and we already were beating our average week of what we were doing like 2 months ago. So
that's phenomenal. So do you have a lot of products on hand, or have you, since the website's gone live and since you've been picking up sales, have you made any products, or has everything been from pulling from inventory?
So we definitely make some products here and there. The Not for Climbing is kind of a mix between like some of the colors we have on hand in stock, and some of the colors we have to, like when we run out of them, we make more.
Okay. But you have them all machined. Your machine's not the bottleneck. You have them all, like, say, in a stonewash finish, and then you just powder coat them if you run out of a color.
Yeah. So we don't have a huge amount of inventory on hand of most things. The exception is like the orange slices, because we sell through those pretty quickly. The Not for Climbing carabiners, we keep some in powder coated form, and then we keep some in stonewashed form, and we can powder coat to order. Though the interesting thing that's happening now is, before I had a big batch of laser cut blanks that I ordered, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months ago. And I know I'm going to change the design on the Not for Climbing carabiners. And I thought I had more time to do that, because I don't want to order any more laser cut blanks. But I just sold through all of my laser cut blanks.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So almost all of these online sales have been Not for Climbing carabiners, because that's what we're advertising.
So have you, do you have an inventory online? Like, are they sold out, or are you going to just sell them and then you're going to have to get them out the door really fast?
We're not sold out yet, but if sales continue the way they are, we're going to be sold out soon. And there's some things we can do. Like, we have some colors that we have powder coated that were for sale on the Kickstarter, but we don't have in our store. Like, we have a green. It's kind of a tennis ball green that we call, the powder company calls Manta Green. But it is so difficult to powder coat reliably that, like, we dropped that color off. And I still have 3 of those carabiners left. So if I need to, I can sandblast those off and then recoat them a different color. So, like, I have some margin there. I have 4 carabiners right now that are prepped for powder, and I have 10 stone washed in my tumbler. So like we have a little bit of a margin, but
do you have a place on your website for either rejects or low inventory not coming back products like those that you could put for sale on there at maybe a discounted price or limited quantities, and say that, hey, once these are gone, they're gone. I'm not bringing them back, but I have a few if you want them, or I have some that are not 100%. They're not up to my quality standards. I would normally toss them, but I'll sell them at a discounted price. Just an area, you can call it, the clearance bin or the deal corner, or, something. And just have a page of items that are, and you could just have like a little explanation. These are items that are either once they're sold out, we're not bringing this color back, or like I said, defects, all that kind of stuff.
If the product was 100% good, but like for whatever reason we weren't selling those anymore, I would just put them up on the website as a product. Like I don't feel the need to separate those off. For the not for climbing carabiners, the plan was to just put the old models on clearance after the new revision was done. That's how we were going to handle that, but we're going to sell out before we get there, so it doesn't matter. I don't like to sell blems if at all possible, especially on existing products. But if I did sell them, I would put them on the Patreon store and just let my Patreons get them.
Okay, that's fair. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I don't like to undercut my sales with my own products if I can avoid it.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
But as part of the not so technical carabiner campaign, we sold some not for climbing carabiners, and if you include those numbers, we're already sold out of carabiners. So I need to make the next revisions before I finish shipping the not so tactical.
How's the fulfillment or the machining going on those?
Last week was a lot of bashing my head against a wall, but like making small little progresses. And just today, we are starting to fill some of our Kanbans with good cores. We've been able to make scales for a while. I'm actually way overstocked on scales right now, but it took a lot of tinkering and playing and a lot of broken tools, but the cores are starting to come off the machine now.
So one thing, I'm not sure if it made it into last week's podcast, but I'll because I think it was after we got off. But do you want to tell everyone what you figured out?
Yeah. So one of the problems I was having was there was a couple symptoms, but the solution to the symptoms was I had loaded the wrong tool into the tool holder. And I thought I was using a 2.5 millimeter end mill when I was using a 3 millimeter end, or no, vice versa. I was using a 2.5 when I thought I was using a 3. And after,
your camera,
I just kicked my cord. So after I figured out that with Harrison's help, things started to go a whole lot more smoothly. I couldn't figure out why tool paths weren't lining up, and it turns out that it was a 0.5 millimeter bigger, or a millimeter bigger than it should have been. And then every problem I had other than that is I did some more design tweaks so that the opening closing mechanism is like really, really good now. The lockup, I should call it. And every problem I had after that has been material movement. And I didn't quite realize how big of problems that was causing me, because they were like, those issues were being hidden by other issues. The biggest problem I have now is because the material is moving, it's bowing up. Some of the carabiners are thicker than other carabiners. There's about a plus or minus 5 thou range, so a total of 10 thou difference. And that is causing problems when I go to my Op2, because my chamfers are it's supposed to be a 5 thou chamfer, and sometimes it's a 0 chamfer, and sometimes it is a 10 thou chamfer.
Gotcha.
And also, which, I mean, they're being tumbled and powder coated, and so like if it was consistent, that would be fine. But because it's material bowing, a lot of, like, depending on where the carabiner is sitting on the bow, Some of them are like on size on one side and then like 5 thou oversized on the other side. So the chamfers are uneven going all the way around, which even if like a little bit of a chamfer difference is fine when it's buried underneath all the finishes that I have on it. But a uneven chamfer is very obvious.
Yeah.
So I think it just comes back down to my facing strategy and trying to tweak that to be a little bit better. I may add some extra screws for work holding.
Still trying to figure it all out.
Still trying to figure it out, yeah. I didn't really realize that was my problem until I redid my Op2 fixture, which is now working great.
Did we talk about this last time? Have you considered getting stuff Blanchard ground to get?
Yes.
Okay.
I understand now why all the knife makers do it, because it's basically the cause of all my problems.
Okay.
I briefly did like a quick Google search to see if there was anyone in the area. I haven't reached out or gotten a quote or anything.
Okay. I was just curious because like, did you watch the latest Grimsmo Knives video? Like he's actually starting to post again.
Yes, I did.
Like, it's amazing, even with all their machines, how many processes they still have to get where they're at.
Yes.
It's both cool and disheartening and awesome.
Yeah.
And terrifying. It's like so much of like both emotions as someone who's trying to do a business and create good products, because it validates how much of a process something like what you're going through right now is. Nothing is as simple as you ever think it is.
Correct.
But at the same time, it can be extremely rewarding as you climb that quality ladder and get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Because there was always another tier. As soon as you feel like you're doing something that's awesome and great, you can look up and see someone else doing it a little bit better or a little bit different, or, you know, fill in the blanks. And it's exciting because there's always a ladder to climb. And if you make it to the top, then that means you're blazing the trail, because they could still go higher even when you get up there.
Yeah. So. And I'm, you know, so we're having these little chamfer issues, and I'm scrapping. I scrapped probably 5% of the last batch, maybe 10%. Which is a lot of carabiners. However, this is a whole nother conversation. Like I did a batch of 28, and I couldn't go back and make changes to those 28 that I already made, and I didn't know it was going to be an issue. So hopefully for this next batch, I can improve that. Yeah. But I lost. I am very happy with how these are turning out. They are so much nicer looking than my last batch of carabiners, than the not for climbing ones. Because we're getting away from that laser cut edge.
That is awesome.
So, and the lockup is just a lot better. It's a lot more secure.
Yeah. So that is awesome. I just had a thought of something else real quick, because I was thinking about websites. How long did it take your website to start selling once you went live with it? Do you know?
The website was live for a while, and the only sales I got through it were ones that I directly drove to Instagram. The thing that changed was our advertising. And getting better at running ads.
Well, the reason that I asked that is to set up a framework of a different question, or not a question, but just something that happened for me over the weekend. So we're in the middle of probably the largest order we've ever done to date, revenue-wise. It's about a month's worth of revenue. And the customer we're doing this for was really hounding me last week to get some of the products so they could take some photos for their website. Their website went live on Friday, and they had 25 orders by yesterday.
Okay.
And it's basically just like a single page website that's like, buy now. That's it. And so I I don't know if that's a good sign for like this product line or selling, but I just thought that was kind of insane as someone who's trying to always sell stuff, that he's on to something if he's already sold that many in a couple days. And I know he's not doing any advertising or anything that I know of. It's just all word of mouth.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he does
so
see a lot of
the question
people.
is, what's his network there like, and like
Yeah.
who's he talking to, and how many people does he know? Because 25 for a product launch is totally reasonable.
It is, but this is, you got to remember, this is the guy's really good. Like, I really like him a lot, but I wouldn't call him, at least from what I've seen, super tech savvy. And so it's just kind of cool to see if he's got a network, or if there's that many people. Because I know if I launched something on my own website, I couldn't get 25 people probably to buy it easily. I'd take a lot of work, and I don't feel like he's put a lot of work into advertising.
Mm-hmm. I would say let's see what he does next week.
Yeah.
And how many of those are organic sales? I mean, word of mouth is a real thing, and like you don't have to sell things through the internet. There's other routes.
Yeah. No, I know people totally do it. It's just an interesting perspective that I'm being able to see. But I am happy though, because this is way outside of what we normally do, but it's been a lot of fun. And one thing that I really want to take some photos and videos of, and I should have taken some during the machining process, but I have made some absolutely perfect dies for the sheet metal parts. Oh my god, they are so satisfying.
Didn't you have to intentionally make them unperfect though? Wasn't that part of the? Yes. They're perfectly unperfect.
They are perfectly imperfect. But what's really cool about them is that I've designed them with dowel pins and springs, and so you can you press them, and then the springs will automatically separate the dies. And then I have an ejector spot on the bottom that I can just pop out, and they just pop out, and they're perfect.
Nice.
And so before, I had two dies that I'd have to hand line up, and it took forever to get them to line up, and they were always crooked, and they just weren't quite right.
Yep.
Even though that's kind of part of the goal. It's just such a weird product. But getting them perfectly imperfect has been a big challenge. And so to see them work as smoothly and as fast as they are, it's just so cool.
Yep.
It just, like, it makes me smile and giggle every time I do it, even though it's probably the simplest, stupidest thing. But I absolutely love it. So, anyways, I just wanted to talk about that because it got me thinking about the website. For one, that he was doing well, and then two, to talk a little bit about those products. So hopefully we got a lot to finish. And he's got, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast or not. Did I talk about how he found out that there was competitor?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So he's going to be sending some to them, and it sounds like they might be ordering a batch of those as well. So
I like how he's sending his product to his competitor.
Yeah, well, his competitor's making, in his eyes, a much inferior product, and his competitor knows it. Huh?
A different class of product.
Okay, less, if you're going for realism and replicas, different level.
To recap, this is for the audience, this is a replica firearms part of a historically made part.
Correct.
And Harrison's version is historically accurate, and the competitor's is not.
Correct. So the competitor's version is made from a tube. The original is made from two pieces of sheet metal that are bent and then welded together. And ours are made from two pieces of sheet metal that are bent and welded together.
Are you doing the welding? Who's doing the welding?
I have been, but I am no welder, which can be good or bad depending on your definition of what this product's supposed to look like. I would love
TIG
to it's the original was MIG. I've been doing TIG because we don't have a MIG welder that's good enough.
Okay.
We have a MIG welder that's just, it's too powerful, or I have the wrong wire size. I'm not sure what the cause is. but it just doesn't look good. The welds are way too big, and I need something that probably a smaller wire and less heat, or a smaller wire and more heat. I'm not sure which, but in either case, a smaller wire it was needed because it's just way too big of welds.
Yeah.
So
with the TIG, are you doing like a filler rod, or are you just doing fusion?
I am doing a filler rod.
Okay.
So in some places, there's one place that I'm not because it looks good without it, but most places I am. So, and I'm running into all kinds of challenges. I mean, they're the challenges I've had during production or during the prototype phase. But now we're going into production, and I'm trying to make, and similar to you, I'm trying to make robust systems that are easy to use and repeatable. And for this, that means fixture. There is so many fixtures that I'm trying to design, and there's going to be on this batch. I'm probably not going to make very much by the end of it. But if the orders keep coming, it'll end up being a pretty healthy product for us.
That's awesome.
Because it's mostly stuff like send, cut, send, small sheet metal, carbon. So the material cost in it is pretty low. It's very labor intensive. And so anything I can do to reduce my labor cost is a direct increase in profit margin. So.
Have you considered outsourcing that welding?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like the first thing to outsource.
Yes. I've talked to like 4 people. I've got pricing on one person, and the pricing is just too high for what we're trying to sell it for. That it's just a little too much. Okay. I would like to find a local person who's got some free time, who's a good welder, who I could work out a deal on per piece cost rather than an hourly rate.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but I'm teaching a welding class at the university next semester, so I might have a lot of free participants.
Yeah.
All right, kids, line up. It's time to start welding these things. What are they? Don't worry about it. All right, we need... I won't do that, but that would be fun.
I have never been good at welding. I am awful at welding.
I'm pretty good. I'm just not fast. I know someone could knock these out really fast.
Yeah.
But part of that could be my fixturing. So what I did, and I'm still this is something I'm trying to currently struggling with. So maybe I can get your input on it. So the two halves that go together. Right now, I've got them purposefully undersized.
Okay.
And so there's a small gap. And the reason I have that gap is so I can adjust how they fit. And if there's any warpage or if there's any twist, I don't want it to be larger. I want it to be able to be just the perfect size. And so I have a die that I'm sticking it on.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is after I weld it, the die becomes stuck inside it because it's a cylinder. And as it cools and shrinks, it grabs onto it like crazy.
Okay.
And so then you have to beat it out with a hammer. The obvious solution is some sort of multi-stage that can be split apart while it's inside. But I'm having a hard time coming up with something that's not overly complicated, hard to machine, or there's another thing I was thinking of, or couldn't fit in there because it's pretty small.
What material is your die?
Aluminum.
What if you made it out of not aluminum? What if you made your die out of stainless? Because you have
the main reason I did aluminum is because I didn't want it to accidentally weld. Because it's
fair. Yeah.
I wanted it to be dissimilar enough that even if it got really hot, it wouldn't stick and weld. And I feel like stainless, while it shouldn't, I feel like it's close enough that it might stick if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how hard or easy it is to weld stainless to steel. I know they don't hold good, but I don't know if they're close enough that if you try to make a jig where you're using it as a backstop to on the back of your welds, if it would join. Because the aluminum at least doesn't do that. The only problem I'm having with the aluminum is that once it cools, it turns into like a vise.
Yeah. It's interesting. So once it cools, that's when it's stuck.
Correct.
Can you remove it when it's hot?
I don't have a good way to do that yet because of the shape of the part. And like,
why not?
Huh?
Why not? If you can remove it when it's cold, why can't you remove it when it's hot?
Because I don't have a good way to hold on to the top and the bottom without burning myself. Like I could probably make something to maybe hold the outside that I could try to pull through. That could be a solution, which is a good thought. I hadn't thought about that. But that might be a good way to do it. But that also depends on that you getting everything welded up and that you don't have to make any adjustments. That's not a bad idea. I'm gonna have to think about that.
I mean, classically to make non-stick welding jigs, they use copper, but I don't think that would be as like a fixture.
Here's the problem with that, with what you were suggesting. Right now, I have a bolt that's going through the two halves, and it's going through the aluminum to hold everything together while I weld it. So I don't have to. So my area that I'm welding is clear of anything trying to clamp it onto the aluminum core. And so the problem with that is that the bolt and the screw that I'm using would get really hot, and it'd be really hard to hold on to them and spin them off. Because right now I have a wing nut and a screw, which I guess I could change that to a bolt, but I could probably make it work. But the way it is right now, it'd be hard.
I mean, have you considered just not being a baby and using gloves and just taking it off when it's hot?
I have. I've also about burned my fingers off in the process because this thing's glowing red whenever you're done welding.
Yeah, okay, fair.
I don't care how big of it. I mean, and let you because like the gloves I'm wearing for one aren't that thick.
Yeah,
just so I have the dexterity with the TIG welder, and then I'd have to switch out to some really mammoth gloves, which means it'd be really hard to be that precise to split the two.
Yeah. Could you like do some sort of, let's see, maybe not a dovetail to get that, like to break the aluminum thing in half?
That's kind of what I was leaning towards, was not necessarily a dovetail, but something where it's kind of like a ramp, where two halves come together and ramp to the right size, and then you unscrew a bolt or something, and then the ramp can kind of go out. But that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. Or like the closest thing, which I don't have a way of making without buying, would be like a Mighty Bite ID expansion clamp, where I expand it out to a size, I do my welding, and then I back off the screw, it shrinks, and I pull it out. That seems like the best method. But one, I don't know if I can buy an ID expansion clamp. Well, I haven't looked, so that's shame on me for that. The ID expansion clamp for the right size. And two, if they're in aluminum, because I don't want to do steel or stainless.
Yeah. There's got to be some sort of coating you can do on steel, though.
So that's my current predicament.
Maybe even like a graphite lube kind of thing.
And then the other thing is I want to have multiples of these jigs, because if I can get it figured out, I can have someone welding it up one, and then another person disassembling and reassembling while someone else is welding. And that would really speed up the process. Because
there are mandrels on McMaster from 1/4 inch to 1 3/4 inch, starting at $20 and ending at $75.
Are they aluminum?
No.
Oh.
With those.
Yeah, I'll have to try that.
And you could just steal their design here and make that. That's an easy part.
Yeah.
It's just a rod with a threaded hole and a flathead screw, and then do a couple bandsaw cuts.
Yeah, I guess you could do bandsaw cuts. That would work.
And you wouldn't need much. You just need a couple thou to account for thermal expansion.
Yeah. That's basically what I'm leaning towards, is something along those lines. So, but then the next problem I have with that is I need to have the ability to expand it out to a known size. And so what I was thinking was that my thought process on this was, I would do something like that, and then I would screw in my screw to a set depth, and then I would put it on my lathe and turn it to the right diameter. And then whenever I backed off the screw, it would shrink.
Oh, yeah, because you don't actually need an expansion clamp. You need the opposite.
Yes.
You need a
retraction clamp.
A retraction clamp.
Basically, I needed to start out in the expanded state, and when you back off the screw, it releases.
Have you tried putting it in like ice water? Because the aluminum should shrink more than the steel. The only reason it's shrinking on is because the steel was a lot hotter when you welded it.
Yeah. I haven't tried that, but I feel like, one, your water would heat up over time.
It would.
And two, it's not going to be as fast of a process if I can come up with something like this. That
would not be.
Because I'm trying to do a couple hundred of these.
Yeah, unless you did like liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Split it in half seems like the smart way.
Or the ID reduction clamps.
Yeah, ID reduction clamps.
Seems like a good method. So that's what I could do, is I could make something where my screw bottoms out, and so I screw it in until it bottoms out, and then I machine it to the size.
Yep, that makes sense.
And then then I just know every time I thread it into the max depth, I'm at my size. The only, like I said, the problem with that now, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, is that I have a bolt going through the very center of this that's holding the two halves together. And it wouldn't work with that ID expansion clamp.
Going perpendicular through the...
Going through the very center of it. Perpendicular. That's holding the two halves together. I guess, though, if I do an ID reduction clamp like that, I could bolt to it, I guess, from either end. If I bolted through the fingers, that would work. Yeah, I could do that. That would work.
Is there a reason you can't just like hold it in place, tack both sides, remove your hand and finish weld?
What I do is I tighten it up and I get everything perfectly aligned, and then I snug it. That way, while I'm moving it around and welding it, it doesn't move on me. So if I just hold it by my hands, one, it's going to get really hot, and two, there's a chance that it'll move, because that's basically how I started out doing this.
Okay.
Was I started, when I first started doing these, I just used a what do you call it? Use your words, Harrison. The locking clamps.
Like a toggle clamp?
Huh?
Like a toggle clamp? Or a vice grip?
Like a locking vice grip. I forget. Okay. There's a specific term that I'm thinking of. Channel locks.
Okay. Yeah.
And when I was using those, my diameter was inconsistent, and it was oftentimes too small. Because as you'd compress it and as you'd weld it, it would get hot, it would melt into each other, and it would shrink.
Yeah.
So my diameter would get much smaller the hotter the part got. And so that's where I came up with the mandrel, and as it would cool, it would shrink on to the mandrel. So, what the good news about that is I made that mandrel slightly oversized, and then I had a test piece that replicated the size of the actual muzzle that it goes on. And after it popped off, that even though it was really tight on the mandrel, it would fit perfectly on the end of the muzzle. I think I made it like 15 thou oversized. And so,
could you put the thingies on your your mandrel, tack it in 4 or 6 different places, remove it from your fixture, and then finish weld it off of your fixture?
Possibly. That's not a bad idea. I haven't tried that. That's a really good idea.
Because then your heat's not there when it's on the thingy. Then your heat's coming afterwards.
Yeah. I'd have to break it up into 2 different mandrels then. Because I'm really happy with this mandrel. Because it's a multi-staged mandrel. It's got a lot of functionality built into one block of aluminum. Basically, it's oversized for the barrel. It's got a hole going through the center to hold on to those 2 halves. I use that hole not only to hold the 2 halves, but there's a U-bracket that goes on it. And I have another aluminum piece that uses that bolts through, and then you lock that down. That holds your U-bracket in the spot, and then you weld that. Then there's an arm that goes in it. You take the bolt out. That arm closes, and it's got a little ball that goes into the hole where the bolt was. And so that'll fit down there. And then there's a small block that goes on the end of the arm, and that goes into a basically like a keyway that I cut to locate it on the arm, so it goes in the right spot. So it's a pretty complicated mandrel. Like it's simple to design, but it's got multiple layers of things that it's doing. And so while I could tack it and do all of that stuff, I don't know if everything would stay put when you fully welded it out after taking it off the mandrel. Because there's a lot of difference. Like I could probably break it up into stages. Instead of having one mandrel that's a do-it-all, I could have it as one mandrel specific for this, one mandrel specific for this, one mandrel specific for this. And that might be what I have to do. And that would also allow one to be cooling while the next one's going on to the next stage.
Yes.
So maybe that is the solution. Because I've been trying to be smart and do it all in one, but maybe I need to break it out into its different elements.
That was one of my biggest regrets for my carabiner fixture, is I tried to make it an all-in-one fixture. And that led to just a couple miscellaneous small issues. I broke the second op fixture out into its own fixture. My biggest regret with this project was, one, I made too big of a fixture trying to accommodate too big of plates, and secondly, I tried to do it all in one fixture.
Yeah. Would you keep the fixture the same size and do half as op 1 and half as op 2?
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
Because then you every cycle you're going to get a certain amount of completed parts, and you could have 2 pallets or 2 plates out, and one in the machine, and then one where you're moving the op 1s to the op 2 and taking the op 2s off. Yep.
Yeah, that definitely wouldn't be a bad way of doing it. I think that would be much preferable over what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
The other big regret I have is the material covers the mounting holes. So if I have material mounted on the plate, I cannot remove the whole fixture, which means I cannot load it offline, and I cannot stop in the middle of something, switch to a different pallet, and then put it back on. So, I mean, it was all I was trying to maximize runtime and maximize space, but I went too far in a couple different ways, because now my pallet runtime is just stupid, and if something goes wrong, then it ruins a whole day of production. Like if I break a tool, like the other day, I ran it overnight and it broke a tool maybe 40 minutes into the pallet. And then the next day I was like, all right, I'm going to come run something else. But then I had 8 hours of machine time left on that one pallet that I couldn't take off because my mounting screws were covered with my material.
Oh gosh. So what would be your ideal runtime then? If you could snap your fingers and say, this is the runtime that makes the most sense, what would that be?
So you are playing a balancing game between longer runtimes mean you can make more carabiners at night when the machine would otherwise be idle. versus you want to also run it during the day. But if you have an 8-hour runtime during the day, and then all of a sudden you need to make meeples or a different carabiner, you can't make those. And so you get to play this balancing game here. And maybe the best solution is to have two different palettes or two different modes. Like maybe you can run it in half sheet mode, or you can run it in full sheet mode, which I may be able to do. It might be worth it if I look into it. That makes sense. Without that, I would say I would probably aim for 2 hours of runtime.
Okay. If you had an offline sheet that ran for 8 hours, have you thought about putting in extra tool breakage detections, like maybe after every part or after every set amount of time, just to make sure that if something does break? Can you do sister tooling in Tormach?
No, you cannot. I know, right? I don't have many open tool slots anyway. I think I just have one left.
Okay.
Which, granted, one of my tools is like 90% of the runtime, so that would probably be fine. But
yeah,
yeah. I will put in more tool breakage check, because last time it broke, like I said, like half an hour in or an hour into that run, and which means it just sat there spinning the spindle and running the coolant for 7 hours doing nothing.
Yeah.
Which is less than ideal. And a tool breakage check, I mean, yeah, it takes a minute, but if it does it 12 times or whatever over the course of the program, big deal.
Yeah. Can you put that in as a manual NC?
A tool breakage check?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a couple different options in my post. Right now I do it after the tool is used, before it changes to the next tool. Okay. But you can't have it do it after every operation or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be good. Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, because you do want the longest time you can get, but you also want to be very flexible. And those are counter ideas. They kind of conflict.
Yeah, it's a good argument for a robot that is, well, actually, it doesn't matter if it's a part loading or a pallet loading robot. Like
one piece flow,
or like even if it was able to, like let's take Grimsmo's Kern with the Rask tombstones. I don't know how long he's running those. Like I don't know how long each one takes. But I mean, it's not going to be 8 hours or 16 hours on that one tombstone before he swaps it. It might be an hour. It might be 2 hours. I have no idea. But like, he can load up, 80 hours worth of work in his machine, but still have it broken into 2-hour segments. I'm stuck with whatever I load in. That is my segment.
Yeah, so, that's true.
Or if you had a robot to feed in material piece by piece, then same thing. You could load up 80 hours of runtime, but you can also do it piece by piece.
Yeah, that's true. So if you were doing it piece by piece, let's just run hypotheticals here. Would you get the titanium? Would it be economical to get the titanium sheets in a size just barely large enough for a single carabiner?
No,
or
that's the problem.
Is that the problem?
Yeah, you're basically choosing some happy medium between optimizing for big sheets with less. If the sheet is larger, you have more carabiners that are amortizing out the labor of shearing that sheet to size. Basically, yeah, it's too bad titanium doesn't just like come in bars that you can feed through an auto saw. It has to come in sheets, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, titanium does just it comes in round bars and it comes in sheet. At least commonly. I'm sure, Boeing might be ordering titanium bars for some reason, but if you're reasonably finding it like at our level, it comes in either sheet or round bar.
I hadn't thought about that. Interesting.
The other fun thing is material stresses, and stresses in these sheets are just kind of silly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was a portion of my sheet that when you machined out the carabiners, it was basically unsupported on the side. So it was about 12 inches long of unsupported carabiner or unsupported titanium. And that sucker would literally bend up like 90 degrees and be like 8 inches above or 12 inches above the fixture.
Oh, wow. Can you relax titanium through like a heating process?
I don't know. I don't know.
To kind of reduce some of those internal stresses?
That would be nice. I wouldn't want to like ruin the temper though, since I am depending on it being springy.
That's true.
So, I mean, it may be like a perfectly doable thing. I just have not looked into it.
Okay. I'm just curious. It'd be interesting. Because I know, like I said, going back to the Grimsmo thing, he does a lot with titanium, and I know he does a lot to get his material perfectly flat. And I'd be interested if he does something heating-wise or something to relax the material to get rid of warpage. Which, speaking of warpage, I had some parts I did from Xometry that we got dinged on. First time in a long time that's happened. But they were plastic, and they were a really big plastic piece.
Yeah. And
they sent me the photos of it, and the thing had warped into like a pretzel. And what's crazy is when we machined it, it was perfectly flat. Like when it left our shop, it was flat. It didn't have that
material.
HDPE, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty notorious for bending. Would that be getting into hot car territory, being the cause of the issue?
I don't know. I don't know on that.
Yeah, HDPE is notorious for internal stresses and bending and stuff.
I will say, based off the photos, it bent in the direction where we removed the most material.
Which, yeah, that's what they do.
So, anyways, it just kind of, and it was by a pretty substantial amount.
Interesting.
So,
what do you do about that? Like, let it relax for a day before you ship it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just be more careful about machining equally off of both sides. Yeah.
Well, it had a pretty good step down, so it kind of was and I bought material that was within a 16th of the final thickness, so it was pretty well centered on there just by. And the thing is, the part was almost an inch thick, so yeah, you wouldn't think it would pretzel like that, but it did.
I was talking to someone. I don't remember who it was. It may have been Ed, actually, the carabiner guy I mentioned earlier. It may not have been. I don't know. Sorry if it wasn't you, Ed. But I remember somebody saying that when they are machining plastic and they want to keep it flat, they order much thicker than they need, and they take off a reasonable amount from both sides, because you're basically removing, like, the stress is on the outsides. It's not in the core. And by removing the top and the bottom, you're removing the parts with the stress, and you're left with like the neutral axis, and it's less likely to pretzel on you.
Interesting. That kind of makes sense. I did vacuum work hold this. I don't know if that makes a difference. But
the only thing that I could think of that it would do is if it had some natural warp in it, and then you sucked it down to the vacuum. That warp is still there when you release it again. But that would be obvious right away. That wouldn't be time delay warping.
Yeah, and so the weird thing about it was that I machined when it came in, it was perfectly flat on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I machined the first side, and it was basically just facing it to get down to fresh. I probably could have even left it, but I wanted to take even material off both sides, so I faced it. And then when I flipped it over, it vacuumed perfectly down. If it was as warped as much as in the photos, it wouldn't have vacuumed down because it would have been lifted way too high. There would have been no way I could have vacuumed it on the other side.
Time delay warpage.
Yeah.
That's a sneaky material property for you.
Yeah, and I Weston was the one that reached out to Xometry about why we got dinged. And I kind of want to reach out to them again and be like, hey, I vacuumed that on. So if you don't think that that part could be vacuum work held, both sides were vacuumed whenever I did that. So it was flat when it left here.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, I don't even know how you prevent that. Again, you literally just have to like sit the part around for a couple days to make sure it doesn't warp on you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of sucks. Although they didn't tell us what had gone wrong, which was kind of annoying. We had to reach out to them to figure out why we got dinged. So
that's annoying.
But anyways, it was interesting to kind of see it. But on the one hand, no matter what you do, you're gonna run into issues where you ship a bad part to a customer. It's how you handle the situation. Yeah. And no one called us screaming and yelling. So I was okay with that.
That's good.
And we reached out to them, so I was good with that too.
So if you get something wrong with Xometry, do they like not pay you for the job, or like what happens?
You just, your score just goes down a little bit.
Okay.
That's it. They might ask you to remake it at cost or for free, but they didn't in this case.
Okay.
So I don't know if that means the customer accepted it or they were able to fix it. I don't know. Like I said, we had to reach out to them because we just saw our score go down a little bit and then we never heard anything. And so we didn't know if like the customer accepted it, but they didn't like it. And so we got dinged. Like what happened? Like nothing.
Yeah. It was probably like some application where it would inherit its flatness from a different part. And so the customer was like, hey, Xometry, this is a little whack, but it still works.
Yeah. I don't know.
That'd be my guess.
But
having absolutely no knowledge of the part or situation, but
yeah, it was interesting. So I didn't know what to do, but I'm not losing any sleep over it. So
yeah,
it left here in what seemed like a pretty good state.
You have to ship your next one wrapped in ice packs, like a HelloFresh meal.
There you go, dry ice.
Yeah, this part is not going to warp again.
So, yeah, they with my luck, UPS or FedEx left it out on the tarmac.
Yeah,
in the middle of the day, fell off the truck and just sat there for a day, and then someone saw it. It's like, oh yeah, that's supposed to ship.
I mean, if there was internal stresses and they were in one side of the package heated up and relieve stresses on that side, like it's, I don't know. Plastics are like that. I mean, they will do that to you.
Yeah. So the other thing that I don't know is I did use coolant on this, and I don't know if that played into it.
HDPE should be fine.
Yeah, I didn't think it would hurt HDPE because I machined with. I've never had any other issues with HDPE, and I've machined it always with coolant.
Yeah,
because I do some stuff for a local customer, and they've never complained.
Interesting.
And they have a whole formal internal inspection process for all that kind of stuff, which is cool because, knock on wood, they've never had any issues with any of our parts. So, although I haven't heard from them in 3 weeks either, so that's a little disconcerting.
I have cut a bunch of HDPE parts, but they were all just profiles and holes. I never removed material off the top or the bottom, so I don't know if that's normal or not, and it doesn't happen when you're just profiling. I
did some Ultim the other day.
Oh, did you? It's fun, isn't it?
It was pretty fun. They came out really good. I was super happy.
It's like my favorite material right now.
It was like machining a crayon.
Except, no, it's not soft. It's hard.
Well, I know, but like the chips and everything make it kind of feel like a crayon. Like if you've ever taken like a knife and like tried to like shape a crayon.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of.
I can see that.
So, partly because like you do it dry and it just comes off as like a powder or like a chalk. Like, I don't know. That's just kind of the vibe.
I feel like you should be making a chip still. I think I made actual chips.
I had some really small features. It looked like
okay, fair.
Like the parts themselves were like, and I had like a 1/32 end mill I was using.
So another problem that I have been having is because I'm using lots of small tools and small chip loads, I'm making small chips. Those small chips are clogging up the filter mesh that I have underneath the normal Tormach filter tank. And that is then overflowing my coolant tank, which then, and actually, even if it doesn't, it just slows down the rate of transfer through that. And that then reduces the coolant getting to my tool, which is basically slotting 100% of the time, which then breaks. And that's actually another problem with these longer runs, because it's less of a big deal on shorter runs, but on the long runs, that becomes a problem. So I'm thinking about switching to an inline filter that should handle it different. I don't know.
So the thing with the inline filter is it will eventually clog, but you'll be able to see the pressure. It won't be like, because you're saying your bin's filling up with fluid, right?
Yes.
Okay,
and
so
eventually it does overflow.
Yeah, so you won't have a sudden loss. What you'll have is you'll have it slowly losing pressure until it goes down to a trickle, but you'll never overflow your tank.
Yes.
And you can just kind of watch it. I've actually thought about putting like a gauge or something on there, because I know what it normally runs, and then I could just have an alarm that goes off or something that says, hey, pressure's too high. Do something.
Yeah. I need to get that set up. The other thing I did do is I changed my feeds and speed, so it's now running at a lower surface feed with a higher chip per tooth. And that, well, I've done that, and that is where that is. I don't really know if it's making a difference yet, because I haven't run that part again, but I'm hoping that a bigger chip will help.
Yeah.
Also, I was hoping that would help tool life, which is the other reason I did it.
Okay. Taking a bigger bite.
And at a slower surface speed. I think I was running a little bit too fast in titanium.
Okay. Yeah, get that all figured out, because I want to make some titanium stuff. And then I can just copy paste all you got.
Okay. I have been very diligent lately, and whenever I am doing a toolpath that I think I will reuse, I am storing it as a template, which is just making all of my cam much faster. And I used to be pretty good at this stuff, but apparently, like, ever since I left the Pocket NC, I just got out of that habit for some reason, and it slowed me down a bunch. And now that I'm back to using the same machine reliably over and over again and the same tooling, I've like those templates are just huge.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, because me and my cousin kind of have a different perspective on this. We try to copy all of the manufacturer's presets whenever we're setting up a tool. I like to just copy what I'm using right then and there. Weston likes to copy it for all the common materials that we use, and spends a little extra time going in, because he'll set it up for plastic, aluminum, stainless, and steel, or whatever it is. If it's a drill bit, you can set it up for all of them, but for some of the end mills, it might only be stainless and steel, or whatever. Anyways, I feel like when I'm setting up a tool, I set it up for what I'm using it for. If I have to come back to it, I have a link that'll take me to the page. I can set up that in there, and then I'll just kind of build out my tool paths naturally, because I might be tweaking them. Like, I don't want to just have them all preset and assume it's good, because I'm always having to tweak the manufacturer's presets anyways. So I prefer to only set them up whenever I'm going to be running them, and then I can go back and make adjustments and then save that into the preset, versus having presets that are all just manufacturer's recommendations, and I don't know if someone's actually run them before, so I don't know if I need to be careful when running something because it's just the manufacturer's preset.
I only ever store proven templates and proven speeds and speeds. I do not take the manufacturer feeds and speeds. I only do ones that I know work on my machine and the materials that I'm running, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So I understand the argument on both sides. I think if I was doing that, I would if I was preloading them whenever I brought a new tool in, which I mean isn't a terrible idea, I would just rename the template like untested or manufacturer or something like that, and then just change it once it's proven.
That's fair. We did kind of have that on a couple of them. And maybe we just need to go back to that because I think we had like a single asterisk for recommended but not proven, and then like a triple asterisk for just like a template, like a placeholder, like this is for the aluminum, like preset. It hasn't been filled out properly. Fill it out properly.
I think as long as you're consistent in what you do, it's fine.
Yeah. I'll have to sit down and talk to him about that again. Because I get both arguments as well. I just don't like saving things if I've never run them.
Yeah, that's my theory. Is I don't want to like just be tired one day and throw in a toolpath I think is good, but because it's never been run, someone fat fingered and it's running 50 thou feet per tooth instead of 5 thou. Like,
because I had that happen the other day. I was working on a part and I started breaking it. I didn't break taps. Rephrase that. I did not break a tap. What I did was I turned an aluminum part into a homemade helicoil.
Yeah.
So I had a form tap that was going in a hole, and it was close but not quite the right thread pitch that someone had plugged in. And what's really bad is it was a low number on our tool list, which makes me feel like, oh, it's been used before, and so it should be fine. And so I just plugged it in and I ran it, and like I went to put the thread tester in, and when I pulled it up on it to see how loose it was, it pulled all the threads out.
Oops.
It looked like a helicoil. Like I was like, that's not right. So, which is really bad because it looked like all the threads looked good. They just weren't attached.
Yep. Speaking of helicoils, this is my other big regret on the fixture I made. I made my fixture out of Mike 6, which is aluminum, a cast aluminum. And then I spent a ton of time and money putting a whole bunch of helicoils in there. And I guess if I didn't have a billion threaded holes in that thing, it wouldn't be so bad. But the amount of money I spent on helicoils was enough money to justify just buying a steel fixture, like going straight to steel instead of making it out of aluminum. And that doesn't even account for the endless hours I spent doing helicoils.
Yeah.
Which it was so many hours of helicoils. But if I had just bought like a mild steel plate, I wouldn't have had to do any of that. And it would have saved me a lot of money on helicoils.
That's a good point.
So it would have been heavy. That would be the one valid downside of it.
Yeah, but would it be more stable? Would it help out with actually clamping any?
I don't think so, since I am just holding sheets down to flat surface.
That's true.
It's not like I have pit bulls that are trying to bend it. I mean, it would have definitely been a longer wearing fixture. Like the aluminum will wear out sooner, but there would be, I don't know, is steel 3 times heavier than aluminum? Am I making that up? Is that
2 or 3?
I don't know.
It's a decent amount.
Yeah, and it's a like 14 by 12 or something plate, inch thick. So that might be a little bit heavy.
Yeah. That's fair.
But I wish I had just gone straight to steel.
Live and learn.
Yep.
That's what we do.
I'm kind of considering just banning aluminum in my shop.
Really?
And for like just get rid of it in all of my products and replace it with like mild steel or stainless depending on the product.
Interesting.
Because everybody does aluminum. I mean, it's aluminum. Like everybody starts there. But like everybody does aluminum. Everybody can cut aluminum. Everybody with a CNC router does aluminum.
True.
My and the like for the desk stuff, like when you pick something up and it's steel, like it just feels like it feels like a completely different thing. Especially when you powder coat it. When you powder coat aluminum, there's a fly. When you powder coat aluminum, it just kind of starts to feel almost plasticky.
Yeah.
But when you powder coat steel, it's like, oh my gosh, this thing is way heavier than I expected.
Yeah, that's true. I will say this though, I machined some aluminum today that was 70-75.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the first time I've machined that, and it machined completely different than 60-61.
Yeah, 70-75 is supposed to be like very nice for both machining and for products.
Yeah, it was very nice. I liked it a lot. The surface finishes were way better. It looked nice. I liked it a lot.
I machined, it was the fixture, the Op2 fixture for the carabiners. And I mean, it's an aluminum rectangle with some features in it, but I machined that aluminum rectangle and was like, wow, these can look really shiny and good when you're just doing simple parts. I'm so used to complicated parts where you're like fighting every little detail. But when you do just aluminum rectangles, it's like, I can get good finishes.
Mm-hmm. I think didn't you post something on the Instagram?
I did.
That? Yeah, that was
it was like a mirror. It was very satisfying.
How is your Better Desk stuff coming?
Nowhere fast. I just haven't had time to work on it.
Yeah. Just focusing on these titanium carabiners.
Yep. Get them out. The soft launch of Better... Well, I guess the soft launch has kind of already happened, but the slightly less soft launch of Better Desks is going to happen with the pen Kickstarter. Gotcha. We'll release the pen tray and the sticky note holder at minimum with that Kickstarter.
Is that going to be like an add-on?
Yes, that'll be an add-on.
Okay.
For the pen rest, we may have a like specialized version that, or a special edition, I should say, that it comes as a kit with the higher end pens. Because we're going to have some pens that are just a plain, smooth exterior. And then we are going to have some pens that have the generative grip section. And we can do a generative pattern on the pen rests that matches your pen.
That's cool. So can you use the same pattern? Like, is it actually matching, or is it just two random patterns that you're going to pair together?
They will be two patterns that are designed to look kind of like each other, but the patterns that I'm using on the flat stuff it's a flat pattern, and the patterns I'm using on the pens are actually 3D patterns.
Okay.
So they're made via 3D sketches in 3 space.
But how are you going to match them though? Like, is that going to be something that you just visually look at and go, "Oh, that one's similar to that one"?
No, it'll be the same parameters style of pattern. No, I'm not going to try to match the parameters or anything. But if you get like the maze style pattern on your pen, then you get the maze style pen rest. If you get distortion waves style on your pen, then you get.
Gotcha.
I don't know what I'll do for the pen rest, but something similar-ish.
Have you tried the tree idea anymore? Generative tree.
I have thought through how I would do it more, but I have not actually done it. I have some napkin sketches and some kind of inclinations of how the algorithm is going to work in my head. I've been looking at trees really carefully, but I haven't actually written anything for it yet.
I've thought about it some too, and I have an idea for what I think would be a really good algorithm, but I don't know for sure. Basic idea, and I'll tell you what I was thinking, is you start at the base, and you have your first major trunk, okay? Mm-hmm. It'll go up to a set height, and then it can split off. So you'll truncate it, where it can bounce back and forth between two sides, and then once it gets to a certain point, then it's free to open up. Yes. And you'll do that for some of them. But if you try to do that for every branch on the tree, eventually you're just going to end up with something that is just all machined out. And so basically, I was thinking you could have a parameter which is trunk density. Mm-hmm. So only a certain number of lines can go through that area. And then once that happens, they start spawning at the top of the trunk where it starts widening out. And so basically you have a density thing that to make sure everything gets full and it kind of looks natural. Because if you look at a tree, you have one trunk that's constantly splitting out into more and more branches. And so you need something similar to that. It was either that or you have one trunk that once it starts to open up, it can constantly spawn new things and open up. So you have one branch and that branch spawns out over time. So those are the kind of the two different ideas I had.
Yeah, I had a couple different thought processes, but I think the one that'll work will be you do it recursively. And so your first time through, you generate one trunk, and its goal is to go straight up. And so, okay, that's pretty easy. Then you then you start cycling through the endpoints. And so you cycle back through and you get to the endpoint of that trunk, which is, basically the middle of your tree at this point. And you say, okay, make me 2 more lines. And your goal is to go up and to get away from each other. And then you cycle back through and you start with all your endpoints again. And you say, okay, your goal is to go up and to go away from each other. And you just kind of branch out from the endpoints as you go. And so the ones that are earlier in the cycle will want to be like, the ones that are earlier in the cycle will have more opportunity to get away from each other than the other ones.
Interesting. I like it.
The other thing I thought about doing was creating, and this is to add some more kind of variation between the trees, is to add a sun. So like the sun could be, anywhere between plus or minus 45 degrees. Mm-hmm. And so instead of the tree trying to go straight up, it is trying to go to the sun as well, mm-hmm. Which would give your tree some kind of lopsidedness, which I think would make it look more tree-like.
Yeah.
But this is all things that exist in my head, where it's much easier to kind of imagine things that don't actually work in reality when I go to program them.
Have you thought about using anything like ChatGPT to do anything like that? Like,
I have used ChatGPT to help me with this stuff.
Not to help you
with coding.
To help with like the randomness or like the algorithms to generate those.
I don't know how I could convince it to give me an algorithm.
Let me phrase that.
I have used it to help me write Python code, but
not like that. Does it have any kind of plugins where you can like use ChatGPT as like in your program to like do things?
You can add ChatGPT as a library.
That's
you can call from your code, or an API. I think you'd be using it as an API. However, I think you have to have like a developer's license and
okay,
like pay for it. And I'm sure there's some open source versions of something.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to see what you could do by implementing directly into your code that you're doing. Like, because you could do like random, but I'm sure with ChatGPT you could do some more intelligent things than just that.
Yeah, You could also do some more simpler AI, like or machine learning, like some basic neural networks, and you could do like you could at the beginning of the program spawn like 12 or 24 different random points across the face of your coin, and then have a neural network figure out, like, basically solve the traveling salesman problem, and have it figure out how to link all the points, but like have each iteration or each generation as it goes through and is learning, you could have it be like deeper. So the first iteration's 5 thou below the surface, the second iteration's 10 thou, and get deeper. Something like that.
Well, I was just thinking, like, if you could have a way where you could set up your program to do kind of what you were talking about with the recursive, but then have like ChatGPT to build like a profile of different tree species. And then it would fill out that a generalized shape of that species with just lines or something, kind of like using math and stuff to weight everything to where it naturally kind of forms the shape, but doing it as a bunch of random lines.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm not this good at coding, but if I was good at coding, what I could do is I could go find a bunch of pictures of trees and trace them out in Fusion or whatever other program, draw the lines on there, and use those as a my training set for the AI, and be like, okay, here's a tree, here's what it should be. Like, you practice until you can match what I did, because then you could feed it different trees and like have it generate different kinds of trees for you based on what it thinks it should look like.
I think we're getting off topic a little bit, and that's partly my fault, but I love it. I love this kind of stuff.
I wish I was better at coding to be able to do that, but that would take me like 3 years of intense studying to get there.
It's kind of like the Grimsmill thing where he talking about macros on machines. Like, I want to understand macros and stuff so much better on CNC machines, because I know they're far more powerful than what we give it credit for.
Yeah. And especially the other thing we can do on our Tormach that a lot of people can't do is we can have programs we can have G-code programs called Python programs or Python scripts.
Yeah, which that brings in a whole other world that's way above what I can do.
And I bet that wouldn't be too hard to get ChatGPT to write you some useful stuff on. Like, one of the things I've been meaning to do is have my machine send me a text on a failed tool breakage check. Or an email. Email would be easier because then I don't have to pay for data or anything. But that shouldn't be that difficult.
So you can write a Python script to send you an email or something?
Oh, that's super easy, yeah. That's a 1-line program there.
And then just have it called out if it fails? That would be cool.
You assign it to an M code. It would be like M, 999. And then you tell Linux CNC, hey, M999 is this Python script. And so when M999 is executed, it runs that Python script and sends me an email.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast, not specifically about Python, but about people writing their own subroutines. And that's a whole area that I would love to get better at. Because like the podcast I'm thinking of, they wrote it was all about automation, and the guest was talking about how they wrote a subroutine that did a roughing, but when it rough, it would peck to different roughing depths, and it would come down to almost the finished diameter while it was doing that. And this was on a lathe. That way, because the problem with chip management and lathes is that all your roughing cycles are real easy to do a chip break, but it's really hard to do a chip break on the finishing. Mm-hmm. But he figured out a subroutine that would come in and come down almost to the finished depth. That way, when your finished toolpath would go, it would be constantly going from thick to thin as it's going around the toolpath. So it created a natural tool breakage, or not tool breakage, but chip breaking, because it would go like to almost nothing and then back into like, and so it created like a wavy surface that your finishing toolpath would go in that would naturally cause it to chip break.
What podcast was that? I need to listen to that.
I think it was a Within Tolerance.
Was it?
Yeah. I don't remember who, but it was.
Was it like Danny Rudolph on a Swiss, like mimicking what they call it, the LFV or the VFL or whatever that the Citizen machines do? Or
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just remember that one part. The guy who was talking about it did a podcast recently. He's a young guy. He comes in and helps businesses that he sets up and programs their machines, sets up their libraries.
Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't remember his name, but yeah.
Yeah. It was one of his earlier episodes, because he was talking about setting up people's machines, and he would write subroutines for people who are running a specific product and trying to automate it, and how chip management is the number one problem they have, because it's anytime a human reaches in to clear off chips off a tool, a robot's not going to do that. So you have to guarantee there's not going to be chips where you don't want there to be chips. And so he had to write he comes up with some pretty cool custom subroutines to do things. And that was one of the examples he gave, where it kind of followed the pattern, but it would come in and out and get close to the finished profile. That way it was like a semi-finishing toolpath.
Yeah.
That way your finishing toolpath would come in and the chips would break automatically.
Interesting.
And I thought that is freaking sweet. Because basically like a sine wave.
Yeah.
On the outside of whatever profile you're doing.
That is interesting. Well, it's getting late in the episode here. Can I make a request? I did a call to action at the beginning. Now I'm going to make a request at the end.
Okay.
Not a view of the audience.
Oh, okay.
So my YouTube channel has been quiet lately because we've been so busy. And plus people were not responding to the format of video that we were doing. There were a couple people who, very much enjoyed them and were big fans of Design the Everything, and I appreciate those people. But like in terms of those videos converting to sales, like there was none of that. And it's hard to justify doing those videos the way we were doing them when basically we were just providing entertainment value to a couple people. It doesn't meet the mission of Design the Everything or, the business goals of Design the Everything. So I was going to change it and basically go to like an interview format was kind of my thought process, or at least doing an experiment where I would, interview a machinist and talk for, we'll talk to them for 40 minutes and I'll take the best 20 minutes and edit it into an interview and put that out there. Because at very least that is educational to people and kind of helps build the community. So if you are a machinist and you want to be a guinea pig for that, send me a message. And we'll do a video chat just like Harrison and I do here. And I'll edit it and put it on Scott will edit it and put it up on the YouTube channel. And we can, move manufacturing forwards by getting more information out there.
Have you, whatever happened to, didn't you want to do some like Fusion tutorial stuff, or have you done that, or?
Yeah, that was a thing. Remember when the goal for this year was to make 60 videos or 50, 52? I don't remember what it was. I have made none. I should do that.
I was going to say, I could have remembered sworn that you'd done a whole thing on wanting to do all that.
I would like to point out that also one of my goals for this year was to get ready to hire somebody in 2024.
So you jumped the gun on one.
So we jumped the gun a little bit there, and then I got busy, and one thing led to another. So yeah.
Didn't mean to call you out like that. I figured
I
I'd
would
save
still
some.
like to.
I'd save someone who was furiously typing a comment.
Yeah. From the actually, I wonder if that channel's getting any views. There are 2 videos. And I think they were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe someone watched them. Maybe it helped somebody.
I don't know. If you did not sound like this, I'm sure they appreciated it.
It's funny because it's true. Actually, there is so Fusion is a little bit different where there's so many makers, and it's like you're either getting that kind of video, which there's not as many of in Fusion, or you're getting like I have a 3D printer and I'm in high school and I'm going to talk you through the thing I designed. There's a lot of that on Fusion too. There's a gap between, like, there's a big skills gap after that. Like, there's not a lot of advanced modeling stuff or advanced cam stuff or.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like just today, I was looking on Google because Fusion does not have the way to do a part off tool that I can find that has an angled part off tool for lathes.
That sounds right. Yeah, I don't know if you can. Can
Like,
you model as a form tool?
That's the only way that I've been able to figure out to do it. But like, you can do round or you can do flat. You can't do angled.
Yep.
Which is like, okay. Like, it doesn't cause any problems. Like, because it's a part off tool. But it's still a little annoying because it's showing material that's getting eaten away. It's not.
I ran in. There's something else dumb in Fusion. It's like you can't chamfer with a thread mill. I think it was, even though thread mills are perfectly adequate for chamfering.
Yeah. So I actually just did that the other day. I used a thread mill as a bottom side chamfer for a part I was doing, because my double-ended chamfer tool that I normally use wouldn't fit. Mm-hmm. So I just set it up as a 60-degree chamfer tool, double-sided. I literally copy-pasted the part and just changed the type.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, cool.
Backside chamfering is one of those things that I have still not done ever, and it would work really well for a lot of the stuff I do.
Oh, I love it. Speaking of which, another Fusion annoyance that I'll mention real quick. On the chamfer tools, I haven't found out a way for the stuff with backside chamfering or the thread mills, I have no way to set the shaft diameter, like the smaller.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
Could you build a custom tool holder with the shake? No? Okay.
Because like basically what Fusion does is you say, it tries to do it, I think, based off of the thread pitch of the cutter, but it doesn't work right.
Yeah.
And like I've tried adjusting it, and it doesn't really change it very much. So it's super annoying. It looks like it's crashing when it's not, because it makes it larger. At least in my case, it did.
Yeah, I've had that happen. I have another Fusion annoyance I should talk about. With my like file that has all of my carabiner machining and fixturing in it, whenever I am selecting a component inside a toolpath or a body, like whenever I'm selecting a solid and not like a contour, whenever I select a solid in a toolpath, it pops up the like, hey, Fusion has crashed. Do you want to send an error report thing? And then Fusion just keeps working. Like it pops that up incorrectly. And if I X out of that or hit send, it force closes Fusion. But if I just ignore it, it keeps working.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
I'll be working and I'll have like 6 of those in the background.
Yep. Yeah. I have had that happen quite a bit here recently, now that you mention it.
It must be like a bug with the new update.
And Weston specifically has a problem where Weston's Fusion is corrupting files, but I can still open them. Is the weird part.
That's
like he
super
can't
weird.
Open them. Like he can't open them, but I can open them and then I can resave them, and then he can open them.
Does he just need to reinstall Fusion?
Maybe. We've tried updating
that.
it, and I think we've tried reinstalling it too.
Okay. Yeah, that's extra broken. Is he like on a Mac and you're on a PC?
No, we're both on Windows computers. I'm on a gaming computer, and he's on a Dell CAD computer.
Huh.
That's like I get the error all the time that says, like, anytime I open SolidWorks, it says your computer does not have the right type of graphics card to run it. Like, whatever that error is. So, like, and Weston's got like the full like, he bought his computer specifically for work, whereas I bought one because I was like, I've had so many different work computers. I was like, I don't want to spend the money. If I'm going to spend this much money, I'm just going to get a really nice gaming computer because I've heard they do just as good. And so it was kind of like an experiment where I was like, I'm going to just get a nice gaming laptop. And I like it, but the battery is junk. Like, they claimed 8 hours. Yes. It is not.
That's how this laptop is. Even when it was brand new, the battery lasts maybe an hour or whatever.
Yeah. And so I might have to go back to Mac. I had Mac in high school or in college, and I love that thing. Like, I used it for about 10 years, and it finally died because it was one of the Macs that had the dual GPUs. It had the integrated and the dedicated, and it would switch between the two. It was like a 2011. It was like the first year they tried it, and it was notorious for blowing out the boards. And mine survived for a long time until one day I was sticking it on my bed or grabbing it off my bed, and there was a huge static discharge.
Oh no!
And it just killed it. I don't know what caused it. I mean, it was obviously a big static discharge, but I don't know if it was just like, I don't remember if it was like winter and like I'd been dragging my socks or something happened, and that killed it. So my laptop before this one, I plugged an Arduino project into it once that I had wired incorrectly, and I plugged in the Arduino and just immediately laptop dies. Like, no hesitation, just dead. And it fried the motherboard, and that was the end of that laptop. Oh, that sucks.
It was very sad.
But the one thing I absolutely loved about that computer was I ended up having to buy a new battery for it at one point because I used it so much. But it had at least an 8-hour battery life, almost no matter what I was doing. Like, if I ran it hard, it would last for like 6 hours.
Yeah. That's why I like my Microsoft Surface. My Surface is the same way. My Surface battery, like, if I'm just doing word processing, it'll last legitimately 8-12 hours. Now, a little bit less if I'm doing Fusion or video editing, but that battery just lasts forever. And it's so small and portable and compact, and it's not a Mac.
Yeah. I would use a Mac if it wasn't for SolidWorks. That is the only reason I am not on a Mac.
I've always been a Windows person.
I will build Windows computers. I love building a desktop, but if we're talking laptops, I love Mac for that. Desktop Windows, laptop.
I couldn't
Mac.
stand having both either. I would need both.
Huh?
I would never want to switch back and forth. I'd want it all to be the same.
Oh, I don't care. I like whatever is, at least in terms of laptops, I'm comfortable on both. And I like both for different reasons.
Yeah, give me Windows. I like my Surface. If this laptop dies and I have money, I'll probably buy one of the nice Surfaces.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting way off topic, so I won't go there because we could go on for a long time. So, anyways, this started with YouTube and and a call to action.
Yeah, the call to action right before we signed off, and then we got distracted again.
For those of you that are still hanging with us, we appreciate it. There we go. We kind of got a little off topic, and we're both probably getting a little bit tired, but we appreciate those of you that have hung out with us till the end. Please like and share and tell all your friends. And I'm Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Design the Everything.
Did I ever tell you about the time where I had ChatGPT summarize our podcast? And it was like, in this rambling podcast episode, I was so offended. Right.